Oklahoma is the land of second, third, and last chances. Who were the people that made it so? The Red River Institute, JohnJDwyer.com, me, Gwin Faulconer-Lippert, and our signature sponsor, Atwoods, present Oklahoma Gold. Together with award-winning author and historian John J. Dwyer, we'll stitch the golden threads of Oklahoma history. Here now on Oklahoma Gold. Dignifying our history through the stories we learn. John J. Dwyer, an Oklahoma Supreme Court scandal?
Well, Gwen, yes. And as you know, we strive on this program in our Oklahomans history books, volumes 1 and 2, and in our public speaking presentations, all the things you and I do together to present the truth of Oklahoma history, the good, the bad, the outrageous, and the inspiring, that all of us, particularly the young, might grow more interested in studying it and the lessons it provides, that we might gain caution and warning from the bad and inspiration and confidence from the good. Well, in Volume 2 of the Oklahomans in particular, it's been my distinct privilege to dig up and share the stories of mighty men and women of valor who dared challenge powerful evil right here in the state, particularly when they're little known, as most of them are, to us living in a 21st century that's already a couple of decades old. One such man whose story every Oklahoma school child should be able to recite is former Oklahoma State Representative and Attorney General G.T. Blankenship of Oklahoma City. Before it concluded, Blankenship, who I'm sure some of you listening to this program right now have known him in past years, he turned the searching light of justice and truth on the high and mighty of the state, across the legislature, the legal profession, prosecutors and defense attorneys alike, the state's highest court, and the very judiciary system itself of Oklahoma. Blankenship's story begins one dark winter's evening way back in the early 1960s, when an Oklahoma City judge called State Supreme Court Justice William Berry to his darkened, highly secured home in the city. The first judge shared with Justice Berry one of the most explosive documents in the history of Oklahoma. Stretching across 84 pages, it contained the sworn statement of 80-year-old former state Supreme Court Justice Nelson Corn, who was by then in a Missouri prison himself for related crimes. In Justice Berry's own words, quote, "It told a sordid, sickening tale of bribery and collusion on the state's highest court. It made me feel sick to my stomach just to read it," end quote. Sick and more than a little nervous, even for a Bronze Star-winning World War II combat officer and Japanese death camp survivor. It chronicled decades of bribery of Oklahoma judges, including on the state's highest civil court. Millions of dollars in 2020's currency secretly paid to buy justice, purchase Supreme Court votes, reverse court-correct decisions, reward evildoers, deprive the innocent of justice, and poison the water of Oklahoma society.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, it's amazing. In fact, one of the bought and paid for Supreme Court justices still remained at that point on the court. The only way to remove him was through the state legislature, if the volcanic document was shared with them. The Speaker of the House, though, likely the most powerful man of that era in Oklahoma, refused to deal with the corrupt justice, who continued to participate in rulings and receive his salary. Well, Supreme Court Justice Berry searched for help without success from within the ranks of his own Democratic Party. He finally found it in a surprising place, an up-and-coming young Republican friend, 36-year-old United States Air Force veteran and State Representative G.T. Blankenship of Oklahoma City. Blankenship was the first Oklahoma County GOP state rep since the 1920s, and he led his party's contingent of barely 20% in the state house. Blankenship watched as that powerful speaker publicly mocked the United States government's successful prosecution and conviction of that corrupt, still-serving Supreme Court justice for multiple years of income tax evasion. Then the speaker declared publicly in apparent agreement with the statement that, quote, Some lawyers feel evasion of income taxes is not an impeachable offense, end quote, for an Oklahoma Supreme Court justice. And yes, you heard that right.
A Supreme Court justice was guilty of tax evasion and no one seemed to care?
There was one in prison already and one still serving on the court. And the Speaker of the House thought it was okay. Well, as the January 1965 legislative term neared, the Speaker stonewalled efforts to deal with both the corrupt justice and the larger systemic malaise. Then Democratic House Judiciary Chairman John McCune of Tulsa declared his determination to get the justice impeached in the House and removed from office by the state Senate. Blankenship continued to watch as the Speaker created a brand new committee, which he controlled, to circumvent the Judiciary Committee and handle the matter itself. And I'm sure you'll be shocked, Glenn, to learn that the Speaker's new committee refused to act on McCune's impeachment resolution or even allow the legislature to debate the matter.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, by the time the full House resumed session on January 21st, 1965, G.T. Blankenship was not merely nervous, he was truly frightened. He told his Republican House colleague Tom Taggart, "Tom, I want you to know what's going to happen this morning, so if I don't ever leave that chamber, at least somebody will know what this is all about," end quote. And he told Judge Berry, who had brought this information to him, the honest Supreme Court justice, he was quite certain someone was going to get physically hurt before it was all over. The Speaker's new committee, though, proceeded to repeat their latest delay in dealing with that corrupt sitting Supreme Court justice. Well, future Oklahoma Senate President Pro Tem Gene Howard, a Democratic House member at the time, recalled firsthand what then unfolded at this supposedly short, routine opening session. Quoting Gene Howard now, "On January 21st, 1965, the hour had arrived, and Blankenship dropped the bombshell that changed not only the personnel of the court, but the entire judicial system in Oklahoma," end quote. Indeed, Blankenship proceeded to prove that Judge Berry had entrusted the imprisoned justice's historic statement to the right man. He rose from his seat in the small Republican section at the back of the chamber and asked to speak on a matter of personal privilege. He then commenced to deliver one of the most electrifying speeches in Oklahoma history, and one which altered the course of that history. And keep in mind, he delivered it to a body which at that time included as few members of the Republican Party as now comprised the small Democratic minority in the State House. And a legislative body that with the single-party hegemony had possessed for generations was wedded to a good old boy corruption that endangered the House, Senate, County Commissioners, Corporation Commission, Supreme Court, and Governor's Mansion. And it was a majority, as we reveal in Oklahomans 2, wasn't averse when necessary to using physical violence to attain its objectives. And after the break, we'll find out what happened when Oklahoma City's G.T. Blankenship rose from his back bench and spoke truth to power.
Truth to power. I wonder what the golden nugget's going to be. This is Oklahoma Gold. From the Oklahomans, Volume 2, we are learning so much more about Oklahoma history. Scandal on the Oklahoma Supreme Court? John J. Dwyer, please continue.
That's right, Gwen. State Representative G.T. Blankenship, a young 30-something member of the minority party, fighting an uphill battle ostensibly about Supreme Court justices that were corrupt, but then it wound up stretching far beyond that. And he began his historic 1965 speech about corruption on the state Supreme Court by saying, "Next to a house of worship, the most sacred public institution is and must be a courtroom. The very basis for the success of our form of government has been the unique and eminently successful separation of powers into the executive, legislative, and judicial, the latter having separate and equal powers and responsibilities with the former." He continued to unfurl what he described as a story, quote, "so sordid, sickening, and discouraging, its contents must be revealed for the good of all," end quote. He He revealed that since at least the 1930s, prominent lawyers, in particular the powerful former mayor of Oklahoma City and multiple Supreme Court justices, had traded money running into the millions of dollars in 2020's currency for purchased votes on high court cases. That former mayor, in his scores of appearances before the Supreme Court, had lost exactly one case in his quarter century working there. The people's faith is shaken, Blankenship concluded before the stunned chamber. It is the duty of the legislative branch to show them the difference, now listen to this, between an unworthy individual and an unworthy court. The honest, faithful members of the court must be vindicated, Blankenship said. An investigation by an arm of this body can, properly pursued, restore the confidence of the people and clear the innocent. I have a resolution on the table, Mr. Speaker. Well, that resolution called for John McCune's Judiciary Committee, not the Speaker's new one, to investigate, study, report, and submit recommendations on the matters within 60 days. Instead, a visibly shaken Speaker of the House directed the resolution again to his own recently concocted one. But if the old John Wayne adage was true that this is a lesson for all of us, courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway, G.T. Blankenship had just ridden, and he had done so not for partisan nor personal gain. He was doing so in spite of a very valid concern for his own physical safety. And the honest Supreme Court justices, whose reputations he sought to preserve, were all Democrats, the opposition party to him. Well, bedlam ensued in the House chamber and then outside of it following Blankenship's declaration. Some of his opponents screamed abuse at him. The Oklahoma County District Attorney then called the county attorney, who had himself refused to take action on the matter, publicly insulted Blankenship and called him names. The next morning, another Supreme Court justice yet growled, "Oh, that," followed by a vulgar name, which we won't share on Oklahoma Gold. In a judiciary conference, no one knew whether this yet additional Supreme Court justice meant Blankenship or the imprisoned justice who had just incriminated him, a new one. Well, Republican Governor Henry Bellman ordered the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation to check Blankenship's home telephone for bugging devices. He also told the young lawmaker in private, quote, "My advice is at the close of the legislative session every day until this matter is over, go home. Don't go any place where you might be compromised, either fairly or unfairly. Just look after yourself and don't give the people involved any opportunity," end quote. So Gwin, imagine you're a 30-something backbencher in a minority party with scant political influence and an opposition party with enormous power and the will to use it. You're name called in public by both local prosecutors and state lawmakers, and you're warned by your own friendly governor that your own home is no longer safe, but it's safer than any place else. But you're willing to face all of that because your community and your state are being torn apart, and by those who should be its greatest sentinels. And the cherry on the sundae is that you really have no sensible evidence or reason to suspect that your efforts are going to succeed. I think that's what President John F. Kennedy would have called a profile in courage. And may I say that the message here doesn't concern a particular political party, pro or con, in whatever era. It's about the call to live faithfully, sometimes dangerously, and confront evil wherever it's from. Well, I'm very happy to say that G.T. Blankenship's efforts succeeded on a historic scale. It took many months in fact that grew into years, but those efforts brought down that still preening Supreme Court justice who had already been convicted of income tax evasion, as well as that heretofore revered but now curse word growling justice, as well as that powerful former mayor and others. They resulted in a revamping of the entire Oklahoma judiciary, ranging from unqualified justices of the peace to the Supreme Court. And would you believe that by the time G.T. Blankenship won election as Oklahoma's first ever Republican Attorney General, that the Speaker of the House was on his way to prison in Arkansas. Can you guess what for? Shot in the dark?
Tax evasion.
Exactly. Though, of course, according to him, all those thousands of dollars in mistakes were the fault of, quoting him now, "girls in my office," end quote.
G.T. Blankenship.